local hero. He was command of a K-class destroyer called the Kelly. And if you may have heard of a TV program, Heaven. Now, in Heaven there is a very famous, infamous shipyard, Hawthorne Leslie's, and the Kelly was actually built there. My father worked there. He was a plater. No more to do. My father built the Kelly, so you'd think, and he built the boat in such a way that it would never sink, for welded longitudinals and watertight compartments were planned to keep the craft afloat in battle and in storm. Though torpedoed, mined or shot at in the worst of winter's weather, they said the ship would battle through, and it did. Her captain was informed that a tanker was seen burning off the mouth of the Tyne on a raw December day, and he sent his craft at 30 knots, speeding down the crowded river, straight for the stricken tanker, and its doom. For the Kelly struck a mine, and was torn from stern to forecastle, and she listed deep to starboard, and her decks were all awash. But her bulkheads and her welded lengths, as the planets had intended, took a strain and held on tight, and kept the craft afloat. As she limped her way back up the Tyne, to the Heaven yard that built her, with the crew all at attention, Captain silent on the bridge, the many men that knew her stood in silence as she passed them, for they knew that within Kelly many of her crew lay dead. They were buried all together on a bright December morning, and gently they were lowered by their comrades in the earth, and the bugle sounded sadly as their captain, Lord Mountbatten, raised his arm in final sad salute to the men that he had lost. There was a little 5-year-old standing on the banks of the Tyne as that ship passed, and it's a picture I've never forgotten. This is a one-pager. Also based upon a true incident, and I'll be as quick as I can. It's called a Welsh public house. Venturing into a Welsh public house, first time definite, excuse the accent, the Geordie accent has a tendency to drop into Welsh, and this is supposed to be an Englishman speaking. Venturing into a Welsh public house, first time diffident, had heard tales of Welshmen turning their backs, dropping into incomprehensible Welsh at sight or sound of an Englishman. Pentecoid, I think it was, chapel in the woods, I'd been told, over from Wolverhampton with a busload of schoolboys. Winter activities, and winter it was. Dark night, deep snow, cold wind. My one night off. Where to go? Try the pub in the village, they said. Serve a nice ale, and I'd gone. Trudged through the snow into the dark against the wind, till I'd come to the door of the pub with good ale. Stamped the snow off my boots, took the hat off my head, loosened the buckle around my neck, passed through the door and into the light. Closed the door carefully against the wind and the night. Turned to the bar. No one there. Seated round the fire they were, locals I guessed. Conversation had stopped. I could hear the clock. I stood at the bar with a note in my hand, admiring the bottles in front of the mirror. They were watching me, silent. One of them got up and came round the bar. Stood in front of me, arms outstretched, hands on the counter. He nodded slightly. A pint of ale, I said. He poured with silent concentration and handed me the glass. I thanked him and gave him the note. This he took and rattled the till. Then he turned and gave me the change and looked at me, arms outstretched, hands upon the bar. A cold night, he said, and I agreed. Now, if you wish to stand at the bar, you're perfectly welcome. But if you join us at the fire, you're welcome as still. I thanked him and took my glass, and the space and the settle they made for me. And we nodded and smiled, and they mentioned the weather, and the cold without, and the snow and the wind. And someone put a log on the fire, and poked it into a blaze, and we chatted and joked and laughed. And they sang songs in Welsh, and we sang songs in English. And the good ale flowed whilst we chatted and sang for an hour or more, much more, until it was time to go, out into the wind and the snow and the fight. 2 or 3 heads bent against the weather, singing songs softly in Welsh, and I with them.
Lovely.